Good morning. So this is my echoey kitchen, and we just have to deal with it. Yeah, microphone, I'll get one, I guess, someday. Anyways, hello people that watch my channel, whoever you are. So, on Twitter a little while ago and on my Tumblr, I had like this epiphany, and I didn't end up doing a video about it at the time, but I wanted to do a follow-up now, though it's always best to hit when you're in that crazy inspirational mode. But you know, the validity of neutron decay cosmology is partially in its just persistence. It's everywhere. The logic of it is everywhere, seriously. Once you start looking at it, everyone's going to, you just see, it's like, oh, wait. Okay, so the fundamental thing of this video is this idea that the center maps onto the periphery as a sort of like this closure between the center and the periphery being a fundamental quality of the universe and the cause of conservation and parity. So let's start off with the neutron. In the middle, the very middle of the neutron is the proton part, which is a mass unit. 2 pi, this is my supposition, 2 pi Planck wavelength trapped over its own gravity. 2 pi Planck wavelength photon. So basically this is just like a little spinning, oscillating, and I guess is that what pi is about? Like, does pi relate to the hydrogen band? Because this little thing, it's like, is there a perturbation? And therefore there's a, it sort of wobbles a little bit, or not. Because if it's perfect, then how is the charge balanced? Or it's an inside-outside oscillation at this point. Because the photon's now 90 degrees to its usual orientation, and it's in orbit around itself. Anyways, mass unit. Then the neutron has a secondary layer around that, which is why it's unstable unless being maintained in a gravity field to give it the additional energy to stay stable. So there it is. There's our neutron. The double layer. Right, 2 photons. Then decay. This breaks down this photon. The positive goes inward, is attached to the mass because this is what charge is. So now we have this. How neutrons aren't charged is the question. How do they perform that weird inversion? So there we go. And the negative, there's the proton, and the negative expands out to forever as an electron because it's infinite. Okay, the center maps onto the periphery. This is like almost like a follow-up from the whale Dirac. But this is the whole thing. The center maps onto the periphery. These two things end up being the same. They are joined in a way that we can't do maybe in 3 dimensions. Okay, that's the whole point. You do it in time. You do it by eliminating time, and then all places are the same place, and therefore you can move around because you're at the edge of an event horizon, right? The center maps onto the periphery. This is gravity. This is the periphery. This is the gravitational periphery. This is the energy periphery. This is where energy is the minimal. Deep voids of space. Wherever they are, their 3-dimensional location to us is not the point. The point is to look at the You know, this is an energy surface of the universe. This is the energy flow. This is the way things work, though, because gravity is essentially, you know, directly related to this. No energy, no gravity. There's nothing to make gravity with. Okay, but slowly, because gravity clumps, because everything wants to be huddled together, slowly it drifts in, and matter drifts in. Or charge drifts in. If in an atom, this is a mass with positive charge, outflow here, inflow here, concentration here, density here, mass here, concentration here, diffusion here, at the periphery. Neutrons pass through this hole, this point, and this point, join through the bulk, because there is no bulk, because time doesn't exist. This is the topological thing that comes up. If you have time creating a sort of like a mass density, here's a slice of 3D universe, and there's a whole bunch of them in the then to move in time, you have to move through things. But if time is only now, then there is no bulk to pass through. You here and here can be intimately connected without any passage, because there is no time, there is only now. There's no time to go through. That was it. It happened. That's why, in terms of Shirley's surface modeling, this idea, center mapping onto the periphery. Okay, and I'm just going to do it as the infinity symbol. I'm sorry that it is so cheesy that way, but what can I say? Anyways, so this is the event horizon. This is the gravitational flow. Say we do forward. This is where neutron decay happens. Right here is a neutron. This is now, it's like, rather than all electrons being the same, which is sort of true, I guess, except that they're, you know, they all have the same characteristics, but Legos. But there's the neutron. Because the neutron possesses all of the things. It has a mass unit. Plus it has the charge of a proton. Plus it has an electron, comprising that secondary layer to itself, the second membrane, because it's both simultaneously rather than just being one of them. A photon, go like that, right? It has a positive component and a negative component. An electron, on the other hand, is like this. Because we only see this part, the electron part, and over here is the positron part in antimatter universe. Antimatter side, the inverse calculation of that moment. Like in Stephen Wolfram's thing, oh, light shine. You know, in the Wolfram discussion the other day, they were talking about this, that, you know, there's always the inverse calculation. If you see it from the other side, sort of thing. Like one movement on a, you know, you're moving this way, and it's like, well, you're moving towards that way, but you're moving away from this way. You know, you're more negative in the one way if you're positive in that other way. Let's see, there we have neutron is both and both and both and both. I guess just two of them? No, I don't know. I haven't figured out all that topology for all particles, but there would be a photon, and that's why you can have an inverse photon. right? It's the phase inversion of the photon, and that's a pair of photons, and that way it balances out properly. There's the electron with its balance. Neutron emerges, you get the proton, which is flow, and then you get the electron surrounding it, which is outflow to compensate. But the center, the mass center, the heaviest center, then just becomes the most gaseous place. And the thing to remember is the scaling, that here, this entire, all of this is one neutron, let's say, one exploded hydrogen atom. It was a neutron, now it's an atomic hydrogen. Okay, but this is where it's the very biggest. And then the gradient gets sharper, and in half, until we're up to that ridiculous, like this, the scaling of this universe is just ridiculous, to 10 to the 40s, and this is 1 cubic meter. This is, a mole of neutrons. How big is a mole of neutrons even? Probably like the head of a pin, not even an entire mole of neutrons. And yet 1 neutron can take up 1 meter. And you can compress 2 nuclear processes into the event horizon. It's like the center of the universe is 1 neutron, and everything's heading towards being that neutron. Oh yes, that was the thing I wanted to address. I know this is getting really long and rambly, but hey, it's been a while. Oh no. Okay. Apologies. Give me a second. What were we talking about? Neutron decay, of course. This is going to be my first video that I do some editing on, except I have no platform to do editing on, so I need to think of what I was doing, but I think I gotta stop now. No. Okay, so we got a neutron. Oh yes. So yeah, so you have a neutron. And sometimes you have some neutrons and you have them clustered together in an atom, right, with some protons to create the flow to suck them together, and they just fill in the gaps, the neutrons, because you always have to have one first, right? Like the proton comes first. You need the process of the proton, and then it's like the process of the proton electron is a vortex, and you can fit a neutron sitting in the little crook of that. But to try and get 2 or 3 of them in there, and then all of a sudden there's like really not enough room and they'll start to fall out. That's my really rudimentary take. Okay, so we've got this is like an atom, but there's still room, there's still some fluidity. But then you've got neutronium, which still is neutrons with just a touch of room for individuality. And then you have the Bose-Einstein condensate, right? Which is where these neutrons touch each other, and now we have a sheet of neutrons, a volume of neutrons. This is the whole premise of this topology, okay? So here's your neutrons. They're all touching. So they're all intimately connected. They are one thing. All of these neutrons are one thing. They are all spinning one direction or something. Because chromotor synchrony. Boop, boop, boop. Or maybe it's like half of them are and half of them aren't. Who knows? Anyways, right? And then, and this is the axis. From this side, it's going counterclockwise. From this side, it's going clockwise. Matter and antimatter. These are the symbols I'm going to use for just everything. It's totality. Right? And then you have a perturbation in the axis. And instead of rotating this way, this is rotating upwards on this part and downwards over here, which is why an electron here surrounded by, let's do a little flat view. Let's just imagine these are particles, because I don't believe the universe is particulate. I really don't. But if you had an outflow here, like this one is somehow spinning out, and these are all going to spin in around it. And this is why, like, there's an interior and an exterior. This is like, so some of these geometric things just are very persistent. And then neutrino must be, it's just like a wobbly, it's like electron that's also spinning this way in space. And I'm gonna make some little beats, I think, so we can do that, because I think this is basically how it works, right? This is the membrane of time, and this is why there's no bulk to go through. So when you pass, you know, with the geometry, when gravity makes this so small, it can just sort of like flip or shoot across because it's so small and be someplace else. But that's a topological, that's a topological trick of the universe, granted. But allow that topological trick, and all of a sudden the entire process makes perfect sense. And maybe the universe doesn't have to make perfect sense, but I say the universe owes it to itself to make perfect sense, because path of least action. This is why surely surface is like this. It's just like you just fall, you just keep on falling. And now you're falling, but as you're falling, you're expanding again instead of contracting. And there's this weird inversion where all of a sudden it's like you burst from the inside out, because that's what a neutron decay is. It's the closest thing to anti-gravity we've got. You burst. And then you get compressed. And that's neutron decay cosmology. Peace.